And after the exceptionally harrowing Hollyoaks later, it felt like it was the right time for Hollyoaks to announce a brand new storyline that we're going to discuss. Obviously, this is discussing what happened to Dodger in the Hollyoaks later episodes. It's a very serious topic. It can be very, very triggering. So, therefore, if this may upset you, feel free to click off. But they have announced it as a long-term story. So, let's kind of, if you don't know what happened, and this is essentially, to peel back the curtain, this has been recorded the day after the Hollyoaks later. We're off on a break the next week, so a lot these videos are just here for, just in case. So it may not be the most up to date, may not be the most relevant information. This will be released on the Wednesday. This is currently being recorded on the 23rd. So yeah, just wanted to have that there just so people know if I'm not up to date with everything, this is because it hasn't come out yet when this is being recorded. Hollyoaks announces harrowing new Dodger story in shocking late night scenes. Hollyoaks has announced a harrowing new storyline for Dodger Savage in tonight's episode of A Hollyoaks Later, where Detective Dodger caught up in catching a criminal gang in a late night spin-off. The situation took a frightening turn when he was the victim of a brutal assault. Hollyoaks Later, which returns as part of the show's 30th anniversary celebrations, introduced viewers to some new characters, gang members Griff and Sully. Griff and Sully targeted Warren for his riches, but Donnie got wrapped up in this robbery as he fled the drama of Brookside Close. Dodger showed up to try and save his colleague Donnie, but he was overpowered and things escalated when Griff and Sully discovered that the pair were detectives. In distressing scenes, the gang members used violence to intimidate them, and Sully attacked Donnie, who could only watch on as Griff later raped Dodger. Hollyoaks first addressed the important topic of male rape back in 2001, where Luke was raped by his high school bully Mark. Since then, the soap has continued to highlight the impact of male sexual violence, working with the charity We Are Survivors on a number of major storylines, including John Paul's in 2013 and the footballer abuse plot in 2018. In a statement, Danny Mack, who plays Dodger, said, "There was a massive duty of care to get the storyline right, and we worked with We Are Survivors. I felt very emotionally attached to this storyline, the people we are speaking to and for. It's been a real journey." Hollyoaks has explored similar storylines before. There is something about the way this story is going to be explored. It's definitely going to be a new version of what is unfortunately an age-old horrific event. It's a character no one would be expecting it to happen to. No one will see this coming. Duncan Craig's chief executive officer of We Are Survivors added, "I'm so incredibly proud of what we achieved with this new storyline. As proud as I am of all the stories we've told with Hollyoaks. It really is a long-term relationship which began with breaking new ground, and that continues today. Danny is an absolute joy to work with. The care and respect he has shown at We Are Survivors, shown me as a survivor, and given the story has resulted in an incredible and realistic portrayal of male victimhood and following survivorship. I know that viewers will feel so much for Dodger and survivors will want to stand by him in solidarity. Danny has given us that." Alright, so now let's all take a deep breath and kind of process this. I'm not necessarily going to go through all of my thoughts on it. I'll just have a little sidebar by saying I will acknowledge that it was a pretty vivid depiction of this assault, and that would have upset a lot of viewers. But also, I think some of the most remembered storylines were also very, very strong, vivid depictions. And depicting it in such a serious way makes it resonate with the audience because it truly makes people realize that this stuff does happen. Like, one of the most famous social issues that they did was the Trevor and Little Mo domestic violence storyline. And there was a statistic that storyline had done more for domestic violence calls and domestic violence awareness than a whole lot of campaigning had done at the time. And I think you take this storyline with Dodger, a character who is the kind of perennially golden boy. He's never really in that much trouble. And you have this happen to him. It's truly important, and I think it will be important. I think Danny Mac often gets some critiques over his acting style or critiques over how he plays certain situations. But all in all, I think we are in very safe hands with Danny Mac. I think he will do a good job of it. I think it would be horrendous to not make the attempt, and I think this will be a storyline that will kind of make people realize that as much as we've always kind of joked that Dodger is a pretty face, fundamentally he probably is a very talented actor. And I think this material will be very raw, but I, for one, am glad that this is once again being depicted, because I still believe we still need to depict these social issues. As harrowing as it may be, and as triggering as it may be, we need to give a very strong account of these social issues, because it does happen and we shouldn't be turning a blind eye to it. Especially male sexual violence. There's still a lot of issues there's still a lot of issues with how this is discussed, and there's still a lot of issues with how people respond to it. And that's fine. That is fine. But we are getting where we need to. But for survivors of this is important to show how rough it can get. And it's important to depict Dodger's entire journey with this, as he deals with the trauma, as he deals with the grief. So I think with all that typically said, I know this was supposed to be more, I mean, it wasn't supposed to be more lighthearted as such, but I wasn't intending on getting super deep into the specifics about it. This is Hannah Cheers' kind of wheelhouse. This is what she does. Hannah Cheers takes these really big, darker social issues and decides to make it a big part of the programming. We've done it with Frankie and JJ. We did it with the human exploitation. Hannah Cheers isn't afraid to get into some of the darker aspects, some of the grittier things that in most other soaps it's more than implied, and this one was extremely vivid and extremely overt, and there were no questions what happened. And yeah, I think it's important. And once again, as I said, this is, I know I just said that, I'm going to repeat it again, so I do apologize. This is Hannah Cheers' this is the direction she likes to take with these storylines. And yeah, I think that's a bold move. I think it's a way to get there. I am slightly worried at how she will handle this storyline, because Hannah Cheers likes to kind of believe she is smarter than the viewers and she likes to try and throw in some curveballs in there. So I am slightly worried that there'll be a slightly bizarre fork in the road that we shouldn't really go. But all in all, it's always good when soaps work with a charity to depict a genuine social issue that needs to be talked about. And I think this one will knock it out of the park. And I think at the end of the day, that's all you can really ask for. And it's cool to see Danny Mac be given a genuinely serious situation. And with that said, I will with all that said, I will simply, yeah. I think best of luck to the Hollyoaks team. Best of luck to the rest of them. I will say, at least we don't need to. I think the sad bit is that Sully, the guy who isn't dead, because, you know, the abuser is dead. Donnie did kill him at the end of the Hollyoaks later. I think it's going to be really hard to see Dodger come face to face with, you know, an assailant who was responsible for this. So yeah, not the cheeriest, unfortunately, but it's an important topic, And as always, we need to talk about it with the severity that it deserves. It needs to be taken seriously because ultimately this is something that does happen to real people. So we can't just kind of fart around and act like it's not real. So yeah, I for one am excited in a sense, but I'm also torn because, as I always say about these darker social issues, it will be hard to watch, but not in the sense that it's cringy or it's embarrassing, in the sense that we're tackling with a very serious subject matter. But sometimes the hardest conversations you need to have are the most serious ones. So there we are. So yeah, tell me what you think in the comment section. I've been Ash from Watching Walford. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.